This is our 37th class of Tanya.
Ooh.
And I want to share you something interesting. First of all, yeah, it's really unbelievable. It's really unbelievable to have a class of Tanya where it's not always such easy going, and it takes a lot of hard work to learn Tanya and to stick with it. So this is quite special, and I want to share with you something very beautiful. Just in the past week or two, I've received two emails, and I want to share them with you because it's just, sometimes we do something small here, and we think that this is just something small, but then you all of a sudden realize that maybe it's something a bit larger. But one of the things that I do is I put up the recording online because there's a lot of people who, a lot of you so can't make a week. Okay, I put up the recording, so I put it up on YouTube and I put it up on podcasts. I don't market it. I don't market the tiny class, but it's really somewhat wild how the Tanya class gets out there. So I want to share with you two things. I just got this afternoon. You ready for this? Hi, Rabbi. I am a congregant of Rabbi Shalom Dubov in Orlando. That's my uncle. I've been listening to your Tanya podcast, and I am learning and enjoying very much. I just finished chapter 14. Thank you. This is from a Jew who I do not know who he is. That's one notice I just got today. And then here's another email. This is from a woman. She says, I live in Weston, Florida. I was raised Reform, and I never felt as if I knew much about my heritage. Here, 1 second here. There we go. During COVID, I would take many long walks to pass the time, and I started listening to audiobooks and podcasts. One podcast led her to Kabbalah. A neighbor also mentioned the Tanya, and I became curious. When I searched to find a podcast on the Tanya, yours came up. It was hard at first to understand with my limited background, but I've stuck to it. Your members that come to the class are intelligent, and you must feel lucky to all be with each other. Isn't that beautiful? I found other lectures that you have recorded on your website, and I've started listening to those as well. She's listening now to Warrior to Warrior. My mother, as a sidebar, was born in Detroit. Thank you again for all your wonderful teachings that you have available to listen to. I am still walking and getting inspired daily. Isn't that special? To get all of a sudden such an email in my mailbox so our learning Tanya here is so interestingly recently was two Jews from Florida that have chanced upon the Tanya. So what we're doing here is God willing going to be having a continuous effect to many people who are not present, who we don't even know, and who knows for who in the future. So l'chaim to that. That was a very inspiring moment and humbling thing to get such notices. Like, who gets fan mail from people in other states? I'm trying to feel like a celebrity. Don't let it get to my head, please. Joel, don't let it get to my head. In any case, dear friends, let us get on with the show. We have a very special chapter coming up because this is one of the most fundamental chapters in Tanya. And forgive me if I say that too often. But the Alter Rebbe himself says that this is a very fundamental idea. We've been learning so much about the Beinoni. And of course, the Beinoni is who we are. So it's a very worthy topic to be learning about. But who's the Beinoni? Number one, the Alter Rebbe said, you should know that the Beinoni is within reach. Because the Beinoni is not somebody who's always inspired and automatically emotionally aligned, emotionally in sync with who we want to be and the standard that we're trying to live up to. A tzaddik is always, in that groove. A Beinoni is not. So the Alter Rebbe says, if you're human, if you have bad days, if there are days where you're not feeling spiritually strong, if there are days where you feel a little bit in the mud, a little bit that your animal soul is dominating, that's okay. That's the Beinoni. The Beinoni, despite being moody, let's use that word, despite not always being emotionally there, sometimes he's emotionally in a good space. A lot of times he's not. That's okay. But despite that, he's committed in behaviors, in thought, in speech, and in action. There's consistency, there's commitment, and this Beinoni is making it happen and doesn't become weak, does not allow himself to become weak. How does he not allow himself to become weak? Because he knows he has the power. He has the power to control his heart, control his animal soul. The animal soul's in the heart. The Yetzer Hara is in the heart. Just because you have an impulse, an instinct, stemming from the heart, a drive, a push, let's do this, let's think this, let's say this. You don't have to do it. You are in control of your heart. If you only choose to take control. And there's no such thing as a human saying, I've lost control. What could I do? So the Alter says that's a Beinoni. It starts one day at a time. And the key to the continuous growth of the Beinoni, which we just learned about in the last chapter, chapter 15, is that the Beinoni never ever rests on his laurels, right? The Beinoni is not taking it easy. The Alter Rebbe does not want a Beinoni to ever be complacent, stagnant, and habitual, comfortable in his status. A Jew has to grow, a Jew has to be challenging him or herself, and the Jew has to always be looking for his next step forward. So you could imagine that the Beinoni is not really up for an easy life. In the Alter Rebbe evokes the term quite often in Tanya that there's a battle. There's a battle. Yeah, there's a battle. We're showing up for battle. We're showing up for battle against our animal soul. Who's going to win? Who's going to be the stronger man? Who's going to be the more committed man on the battlefield? So the Beinoni has to always be fighting. Sometimes he's more in the mood, sometimes he's less in the mood. But the idea what makes the Beinoni is that there's consistency. It's a lifelong commitment. You're always growing. You're always committed. The question, of course, is how can you ensure consistent devotion? How could you ensure consistent commitment even when you're not feeling it? It could be I've shared this with you earlier, but a few months ago I read in an article that statistically most diets don't survive past the 2-week mark. 2 weeks is really where the excitement of diets wears off, and that's where people fall off the bandwagon. And it really does make a lot of sense because a diet at the beginning is very exciting, maybe even fun. All of a sudden you're very, very in tune to what you're eating. There's schedules, there's foods. But then at a certain point, the excitement really wears off, and then it's a question of, am I committed or not? And for many people, it's very difficult at that point to make that long-term commitment, even when there's no excitement. So the Beinoni is not just a guy who has this, passing fad. Okay, I'm going to be spiritual for a week. No, this is a real, legitimate, deep commitment to God, commitment to our own spiritual growth. So the question is, of course, how does the Beinoni make it there? Okay, Joel is asking a question, and I want to address this question briefly. Joel says, there's a little confusion here. Are we Russia's trying to be a Beinoni, or are we Beinonis trying to be a true Beinoni? The answer is that we are all Russia's trying to be a Beinoni. But that is not grounds for depression. Okay? That's not grounds for despondency. That is okay. That is the healthy goal. Now, when we become Beinonis, that is going to be pretty unbelievable. And then we're going to have to work on becoming even better Beinonis. But the key is every moment of life in a certain way is a decision of, am I on the Beinoni path? Am I on the Beinoni journey? And from that perspective, every single moment you could be a Beinoni. Am I going to be more of a Beinoni today? Is more of my life going to be in Beinoni mode, or is more of my life not in Beinoni mode? So it's like everything in life. It's a little bit more nuanced than just, am I in or am I out? It's a journey. It's a process. And as we learned in the last chapter, the process is sometimes even more important than the results. The journey is really where it's at. It's the effort. It's the battles that we show up for, which is really where God wants to see us, and where success is defined. So, important question, Joel. But in any case, coming back to chapter 16, where does the Beinoni find that willpower, that stamina to be consistent? And dear friends, this is going to be the chapter where the Alter Rebbe speaks to us about one of the most important, most critical ideas in spiritual living and in general the worldview of Tanya and the worldview of Chassidus, which is like this. I want to read a little bit with you, and then I'll do some explaining. So, chapter 16, and the name of this chapter is Generating Emotions for Spiritual Growth. Part 1, the role of meditation and emotions. All right, here we go. The Alter Rebbe says, chapter 16, this, what I'm about to tell you, is a guiding principle in your divine mission as a Beinoni. Okay, these are very big words. This is a guiding principle, the key principle of your life as a Beinoni. The core strategy is to rule over the instinctual impulses of the animal soul, which is in the left side of your heart. How do you do that? By means of the light that God shines upon the divine soul in your brain. So this is the esoteric language. We're going to have to make it practical in a moment. But the idea here is, how do we rule over the animal soul? We need the light. We need divine light. We need godly light in our brain. How do we do that? So, dear friends, I want to give you a little bit of a brief introduction. Every action in life, where does it come from? We humans do actions. So what could be an action? An action could be we drive somewhere. An action could be we pick up the phone to call somebody. The action could be we log on to a Zoom to join a Tanya class. We go shopping. Where does that action come from? What is the backstory to that action? Why did you do that? So what would you say? I want to hear some ideas from you. If we need to backtrack, how do we make actions happen in people? What makes actions happen? What would you say?
A desire to have something or to want something.
Oh, so you're using the word desire.
Yeah.
There has to be a want.
The need.
Or a need. David's saying the need. Very good. Very good. Okay. Let's flesh that out a little bit more. Who else? Anybody else wants to share something? So you have to want or need something, and then you'll go and do it. Or in other words, you need to have an emotional pull towards the thing. And then you will go and do something because of that emotional pull. So for example,
Didn't go with that too?
you could go with that too. Or I think that's the ultimate of it, which means, let's put it this way. Why do people go to work? That's an action. We wake up early, we set an alarm, we wake up early, we go to work. We could be out golfing, we could be resting, we could be watching a TV show, but we go to work. Why do people go to work? It's because they want money or they need money. Okay. But even money, whoever said that you need money?
The government.
No. So, so the very genesis of our relationship with money, of wanting money or needing money, is what let's put it this way. What compels the action to go after money is a feeling, is an emotion. We act upon emotions. So for example, if you would tell a little kid, you got to go work because you need money, what's the kid going to tell you? Little kids don't understand money yet. They don't appreciate money. So they don't have any emotional attachment to money. So therefore, money is not compelling them to do anything. The way it works is actions stem from emotions. When we emotionally feel something, we want to then do it. Or we want to do something because of that. So we want to just simply start backtracking the way things work. Actions don't happen in a vacuum. Actions stem from some emotional pull, some emotional trigger. I feel something. Therefore, I want to go do it. So, people book a vacation because they feel I want to go on a vacation. They get excited about the prospects of going on a vacation. I want to spend time with my family. That's an emotion. The emotions is really the impetus, is really the backstory to your emotion, to your actions, to your behaviors. Does that make sense? So, when do we do things? When we feel something connected to it. And then we want to do something. That's the link. That's the link. Actions come from emotions. Okay.
Sometimes,
Yes,
sometimes an action might give you a certain emotion though too. So you can also see that, that by doing something, you'll feel a feeling. So that would be your emotion is I want to have the feeling that I have after I do the action.
Yeah, 100%. That's right. Sometimes you don't feel it before you do it, but you push yourself to do it even though you're not feeling it, with the hope and the expectation that afterwards you will feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's also true. But generally speaking, unless there is a concentrated effort, our actions stem from an emotion. And we could look at our day. What did I do today? Literally, something has to move the human body. Something, there has to be a motivation that's pushing you to do something. Why do you want to go shopping? Because I want to make supper. Okay, so it's always even supper. So who said he wants supper? There's a feeling. It's an emotional reality. Okay. Where do emotions come from? Let's keep on backing up the train. Let's go to the previous step. Where do our feelings come from? What gave birth to these emotions? The answer is our knowledge. So when we understand something, and when we understand and relate and connect to the relevance or to the power of something, then we start feeling something for it. And then when we feel it, we want to do it. So for example, money. We all know humans go crazy for money. That is literally what drives people. That is one of the biggest motivations in our world, money, right? Babies are not born with an interest in money. Little children, when they see a dollar bill, they either color on it or they rip it up, right? So they look at it as just another piece of paper. What is the beginning of our relationship with money? First, we have to understand that money is value and that money could get things for us. When we start understanding that, we start connecting with it. Wow, this is relevant. This is important to my life. This is not theoretically of value. This is practical. And then we start all of a sudden getting feelings for it. I want money. Right now, I feel connected to money. I want more of this. And that compels us to start wanting to do stuff for money. Now I'm motivated to get to work to do something for it. So actions come from our feelings, which come from our knowledge, come from our cognition. That is the step. So we have to have knowledge. That knowledge has to be internalized to the point that we relate to it and we see its relevancy and its value and its importance, that leads to emotions and that leads to action. So the Alter Rebbe says, a Beinoni, to be consistently motivated in the area of behaviors, needs to constantly try to generate good and healthy emotions for God and for spirituality. Your emotions is the gas in your tank that helps give you all that energy that you need, all that willpower, all that stamina that you need to show up for battle every single day and to be a Beinoni even when it's hard. So the Alter Rebbe says, you have to feel it. Where do feelings come from? Feelings come from meditation. You have to have meditation comes from what you study. So the Alter Rebbe says like this. There are going to be 4 dominoes. And the way dominoes work is that you hit one domino, that hits the second one, that hits the third one, that hits the fourth one. What the Alter Rebbe says, the most important thing in a Beinoni, that the Beinoni needs for strength, is to meditate on God. And I want to clarify, the word meditation is maybe not the correct word. Because meditation has a lot of meanings in the modern world. But meditation very often means to clear out the mind, right? Empty out the mind. In Tanya, that's not what the Alter Rebbe means when he uses the word meditation or contemplation. What the Alter Rebbe wants us to do is to be very focused on an idea, on a study. Study, and not just study, but then think deeply, contemplate, mindfully meditate on what you studied about God to the point that you start connecting with it. That God is not just going to be a theoretical concept, something that you study about in books, but something that starts something that you start connecting with, something that you start bonding with on an intellectual level. You start seeing its relevance to you. It starts impressing something upon you. And the Alter Rebbe says a Beinoni must do this. Create an active, conscious awareness, a connection with God through contemplation. So how do you do that? You have to do that simply by studying. This is why it's so important for a Jew to study Torah, and especially the area of Torah that teaches us about God, which is Chassidus. In Chassidus and Tanya, we're learning about God, what God's relationship with us is, what God's relationship with the world is, what God means to us, what it means to have a soul, what it means, what Torah and mitzvahs are in our lives. When we study these things, then we have what to think about. We have what to contemplate on. And when we contemplate and we allow these ideas to become personally relevant, you know what then happens? We start having emotions. We start feeling it. We start feeling emotionally interested in it. Because that's human nature. You can't avoid human nature. Human nature is at the moment that we understand something, the moment we start connecting with something, we're going to start feeling an emotional gravitation. We're going to start having emotional opinions about that thing. Do I want it? Do I want to stay away from it? Etc. When you have emotions, then you now have the energy, the impetus for your behaviors to do the right things, to stay away from doing the wrong things. So the Alter Rebbe says, the guiding principle in the life of a Beinoni is that even though you are going to lead your life, even when you don't feel it, and it's true, you have an animal soul, you're very often not going to feel like doing spiritual things. You're not always going to feel so godly and so holy and so spiritual, but you need to always be working on filling up your emotional reservoir, which comes through contemplation. And again, this is human nature. The more you think about something, the more you're going to feel it. That's the way it works. I don't want to get too carried away, but just think about something that you used to not have a feeling for, and now you have a feeling for it. And you can ask yourself, When and how did I start developing a feeling for this thing that I used to not have a feeling for? So let's read. Let us start again from the beginning of the chapter. This is a guiding principle in your divine mission as a Beinoni. The core strategy is to rule over the instinctual impulses of the animal soul in the left side of your heart by means of the light that God shines upon the divine soul in your brain. So you're going to be ruling over. The strategy is you're going to rule over your animal soul by godly light that shines in your brain. Practically speaking, what does that mean? So this is what it means. Dear friends, this is critical. This means governing your heart by following these steps. Let's follow these following steps. Number 1, engage your brain in a contemplation of the greatness of the infinite God to the point that this understanding, which is the power of Bina, Bina is one of the intellectual powers of the soul, to understand. So understand and contemplate to the point that it will give rise to a mental attachment, which is the power of da'as. Really, there are 2 steps here in this one bullet point. Number 1 is to have knowledge, to have understanding, have cognition. A Jew must learn Torah. Why? There's a lot of reasons why, but this is a very practical and a very important reason why. You need to have an intellectual connection with God. And the first step of that is simply by studying. And then it's not enough to study, but then you need to contemplate. Contemplate means, this is practically speaking, this is what it means. Go close yourself in a room, close yourself in your office, lock the door, shut off your phone. Try to, as much as possible, remove your brain from anything going on that day, anything busy, any meetings, any bills, anything that's going on. And try to spend some focused time thinking, just simply mindfully contemplating on something that you have learned about God. Something you've learned about in Tanya. This is why you study Chassidus. The more you study Chassidus, the more we learn about God, then we have what to contemplate about. And keep on doing it again and again and again. Just review it in your mind. Focus on it. Chew it over again in your mind. Make it relatable. To the point that you start connecting with it. Mental attachment. Feel attached, feel connected, feel bonded with this idea that now it's not just a theoretical idea, but it's something that starts meaning something to you. When we contemplate about God, about the greatness of God, you know what then happens? Then, let's keep on reading, this will then bring forth an awe of God in your brain, motivating you to make the firm decision to stay away from the wrong things, to avoid anything forbidden by the Torah or rabbinically, down to even the slightest rabbinic prohibition, heaven forbid. The first emotion that starts budding, we start feeling it, is awe. Wow, there's a God. And this God is something that's worth being in awe of. Having reverence for God, a presence of God in your life. And when God is a presence in our life, that becomes the emotional impetus that says, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I can't do this. If there's a God in my life, I can't do this. God told me not to do it. So awe, a respect, a reverence, is the emotional motivation for us to refrain from holding ourselves back from doing things. But then we have another emotion happening. Let's read the next step. And it will bring you to a love of God in your heart. First is awe, then we start feeling a love, a desire to connect to God. a love of God in your heart in the right ventricle, with a longing and a yearning to bond with Him through fulfilling the mitzvahs, both those prescribed by the Torah and rabbinically, especially the study of Torah, which is equal to all the mitzvahs combined. So there the Alter Rebbe says, there's simply a domino effect. Number one is study. Learn about God. Number two is contemplate about God. Take all those ideas that you learned and try to connect with it. Number three is emotions. Number four is actions, behaviors. Each one leads to the next. Our knowledge, our intellect gives birth to emotions. Emotions give birth to actions. So the Alter Rebbe says this is, in very short words, this is the guiding principle of the Beinoni. How does the Beinoni succeed? Because he's always working on inspiring himself, as we just said, building up healthy emotions, which comes through contemplation. You got to have passion, at least a little bit, something to work with. Now, here in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe doesn't really give us that much to work with in terms of how to meditate, how to contemplate. What should we be thinking about to develop these emotions? Here the Alter Rebbe is simply telling us the basic idea. But later on in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to spend many, many chapters giving us guided meditations, guided contemplations that will help develop within us different emotions towards God. But this is what it means. You know, I hear this often from people. They'll say, Rabbi, I would love to go to one of your classes, but I'm just not, Judaism doesn't talk to me. Or God doesn't talk to me. What's the obvious answer to that? The obvious answer is, of course, God doesn't talk to you. Did you ever try? Meaning, these things aren't automatic? Well, you think naturally you're going to have an affinity for God? You think naturally you're going to have an affinity for going to shul? You think naturally you're going to have an affinity for studying Torah? These are things that take effort. You have to create the emotional desire, the emotional attachments towards these activities. It takes work. See, you think of Beinoni, it's easy to just say, I'm going to be in control of myself. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to do mitzvahs. I'm not going to do the wrong things. It doesn't come from nowhere. Such resolve doesn't happen in a vacuum. A Beinoni needs to meditate to the point that he has emotions. And when you have emotions, then you have the energy to act. That's what we have so far. Okay. But dear friends, now we have the very rest of the chapter. The rest of the chapter focuses on one key question. And that key question is, what we have here, what I named part 2 on page 133, part 2, when meditation fails to yield emotions. What we have over here seems very simple, but it also could be a scary thought. What the Alter is saying is you need emotions. Without emotions, you're missing a domino. Without that domino, your whole domino stops, right? If one domino is missing, then all the rest of the dominoes don't get hit. The Alter is saying you need emotions in order to have consistent actions. Emotions is what makes the behaviors, the actions, fall in place. How do you get emotions? Meditation. Here's a question. The Alter is now going to address a very real question, a very real life, practical question. What if I'm meditating? What if I'm contemplating? But I just can't get myself emotionally worked up? It's a good question, no? Which means it seems from what the Alter is saying is that you need to be emotionally excited. Emotions don't lie. When you're emotionally excited, you feel it. That's the difference between knowledge and emotions. We don't feel our knowledge. We don't feel our intellect. We feel our emotions. When we get emotional about something, it becomes very visceral. When we get upset, emotions can change our heartbeat, take our breath away. We feel it in our spine. We feel it in our bones. Emotions are very real. Emotions are very powerful. So the Alter Rebbe is saying you got to feel emotional about God. Well, that's a tall order. So the Alter Rebbe says, listen, it's human nature. You could feel excited about anything. Just spend time thinking about it. Spend time learning about it. Just spend enough time, give enough brain space to this idea that you start feeling connected to it and you will start feeling emotional. That's human nature. It should work. It works with everything else. All of our habits that we are into, we used to not be into them. And you know what got us into them? Because we spent enough time focusing on it. The more time you spend focusing, obsessing over sports, the more you'll start feeling emotionally attached to sports. The more time you spend focusing on cars, the more you'll start feeling emotionally attached to cars, etc., etc. Same thing about politics. When do people start feeling very emotionally invested in politics? When they start just simply investing time into it. Enough brain space in anything will make you interested. So it only follows that enough brain space about God will make us start feeling excited about God. Sounds simple enough. But the Alter Rebbe says there's a very real life condition where somebody is going to try, legitimately try, really try hard, contemplating and meditating about God, and it doesn't really yield emotions. He just can't get a real, palpable, visceral, pulsing, throbbing emotion going on in his heart. That's going to be the next driving question here in Tanya. What happens when I'm trying to meditate, I don't have an emotion, am I out of luck? Am I in big trouble? And I want to give you the answer in brief before we jump in, because the Alter Rebbe is really going to go into this in depth. What the Alter Rebbe says is, don't worry so much about the emotion. As long as you're meditating properly. As long as you're contemplating properly, the strength of your emotional reaction is not as important. As long as you're contemplating and meditating, and as long as you allow that meditation to then give you the inspiration to follow up and be committed and be a Beinoni. So even if you're missing the emotional link, it's okay. But let's learn. Page 133, part 2, when meditation fails to yield emotions. Says the Alter Rebbe, beyond this, you need to know another guiding principle in your mission as a Beinoni. You need to know another guiding principle. This is another key principle. Let's say that despite doing all the appropriate meditations, your mental ability to contemplate cannot reach the point where it gives birth to a love of God openly in your heart, so that your heart will burn like fiery coals, desiring to bond with him with a longing and a yearning that you can feel throbbing in your heart. Let's say that that's all beyond your reach. You want to love God. We all know what it means to love. Love is a real emotion. You feel it. It's an intense, visceral emotion. Let's say you contemplate. You really do it. You spend the time. You spend the focus. But you just can't get a real love for God going. So what is happening? Rather, the love remains concealed and stuck in your brain and in the subliminal recesses of your heart. Meaning that your heart does feel it, but in a less excited, muted fashion. That's a very interesting condition. This is somebody who is meditating to the point that it even is touching his heart. But his heart does not then go and follow through to generate a real palpable emotion. But instead, in the words of Chassidus, the most that this person is able to get is a consent from the heart. The heart is in agreement with the mind that this is something worthy of getting emotional about, but the heart doesn't actually then go and get emotional. This is a very interesting condition in the human condition. Psychological problem over here, no? The heart agrees we should be excited about this, but you fail in actually getting excited. That's the condition here. I wonder if modern psychology has a parallel for this type of condition. Somebody who knows, they know in their heart that this is what I should be excited about, but they cannot actually get themselves to get excited about it. Here's a little example. Hopefully this example gives you a little example. Imagine somebody, some people are very emotionally motivated to go make money. Let's use that example again, because I really do think that's something which, as humans, we all relate to, the interest and the desire to go after money. So some people are very emotionally excited about getting money. Let's talk about somebody who's very lazy. By nature, they're just very lazy. They would rather not make money. They would rather just sit on the couch the whole day. They would rather sleep in. That's their nature. But this guy knows, in his head he knows, cognitively he knows, that that's not an option. You cannot sit down on your couch and waste time. You know why? Because you got a family to support. You're not going to have any money. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to lose your home. Who knows what, So this guy knows, in his mind he knows, I can't be lazy. I know emotionally I want to be lazy, and my mind tells me I cannot be lazy. I got to go find a job. I got to go show up for my job. I got to go make money. His mind is even able to move his heart a little bit. That even in his heart, even in his emotions agree that we should want to do this. But he still won't get emotionally excited about getting up and going to find a job and going to make money and going and showing up for his job. So his heart knows that we should be interested in this, but he just can't get himself emotionally excited. That's like what's happening over here. Imagine a Jew, he really studies about God, he meditates about God, he contemplates about God, to the point that he could even feel in his heart that his heart is in agreement that we should be getting excited about God. We should be loving God. We should want to be ecstatic about God. But he just can't get that real emotion to pop out. That's the condition. And the Alter is right now going to walk us through what this person is feeling, what this person is thinking. Very interesting condition. And perhaps this is more relevant than we think it is. Where sometimes we know this should be important to me, but I just don't feel it. But I know it's important to me. I know I should be feeling it. I know this should excite me, but I'm not really getting excited right now. It's a very interesting condition. So the Alter is like this, meaning that in your heart, due to the spirit of wisdom and the understanding in your brain, therefore you understand the greatness of the infinite God. Your heart even understands the greatness of God. You understand that in the face of his reality, everything else is truly nothing. If you put anything in this life in relation to God, that thing becomes totally irrelevant. Nothing ever really stands as strong when you put it in relationship to God. God is the ultimate existence. God is the ultimate force. God is really the only thing that really matters. So really everything else is like truly nothing. So therefore it makes sense to you. You see, it makes sense to you. You logically understand. And you feel that it is appropriate. You could even feel that I should feel this way. That every living thing should yearn to bond and merge into his light. You could have somebody who meditates about God to the point that his heart understands this. My heart understands that everything should want to be connected to God and to merge with God. And even more so on a personal level, it seems right to you. It feels right to you. And that it be appropriate that your own soul and spirit should also be so overwhelmed as to long and desire to leave their bodily containment in order to bond with him unrestrainedly. I can understand this. Even my heart can understand this. That it would be appropriate for me as a Jew to want to leave everything behind and be connected with God. And only that, they, the souls, are compelled to live here within the body. The body is what creates a separation between a soul and God. So the soul all of a sudden starts realizing that the body becomes its jail. It's compelled to live in here within the body, and it's bound to it like married women whose husbands have left them behind, unable to remarry. If a woman is married and her husband leaves her and doesn't give her a divorce, this woman is called a living widow. The husband's alive, but because he left her, she can't get remarried. And the soul feels like that. And this guy feels this way too. He doesn't feel it emotionally, but he feels the understanding of it. He agrees with this conclusion, that my soul would really rather not live in a body and would rather be one with God. And now it is stuck, shackled, separated from God. It's forced in a body. By the way, for somebody to really understand this, this is really advanced stuff. This is pretty radical levels of understanding. Can you imagine really meditating about these ideas and really, your mind really wraps your head around it? This is pretty unbelievable conclusions to reach intellectually. But it goes further, right? The thought process continues. And you understand that no thought of your soul can grasp onto him at all. And that the only way that the soul can grasp him is by investing oneself in Torah and its mitzvahs, for God invested his very essence into the Torah and the mitzvahs, as in the analogy mentioned earlier of embracing the king within his robes. So, I know that I should want to feel emotionally overwhelmed and an overwhelming yearning to be one with God and to leave my body. I should have this tremendous desire to want to bond with God. And the only way to bond is by doing Torah and mitzvahs. So really, what should be the result of this whole meditation? You should be so excited. You should be bursting with emotion to go and study Torah. You should be bursting with emotion to go do a mitzvah. But this guy only, he leaves off just with the understanding. He understands that I should feel this way, but he doesn't actually feel this way. All right, let's continue reading. And if so, it makes sense that the appropriate response is for your soul and spirit to embrace him with all your heart, all your life, and beyond, which means fulfilling the 613 mitzvahs in action and speech and in thought. Thought being the comprehension and knowledge of Torah as explained earlier. So this is a guy that he does his whole meditation. He understands and he connects intellectually. Even his heart connects with the idea that I should be bursting with emotion to want to be one with God. And that the only way to do that is by doing a mitzvah. It is impossible to connect with God other than with a mitzvah. And therefore, I should right now be bursting with a desire, with a yearning, with a longing to cleave to God by doing a mitzvah. But he just doesn't get that feeling. He stops short right before the feeling comes out. It's a little bit anticlimactic over here. He has this whole meditation, and even his heart agrees that we should be feeling this way. That's pretty advanced. The heart agrees that this is an emotion we should be experiencing, but the heart cannot actually produce the emotion. And dear friends, perhaps many of us feel this way, that we know we should be feeling excited about Judaism. We know we should be feeling excited about God. We understand that God is important. We understand that God is relevant. We understand that Torah is relevant. But when it comes to action, we're just lacking that emotion. Sometimes the deficiency is our own problem. We're not meditating properly. We're not contemplating properly. But sometimes it's very difficult. It's a very tall order to get these emotions to come out. It's very easy to feel emotional about money because we live in a very physical world, and therefore anything physical and materialistic stimulates us very easy. It's very difficult to stimulate ourselves about God and spirituality and about Torah and about mitzvahs, especially when everything spiritual is competing against all physical. So the Alter Rebbe says, are we in trouble? Are we in deep trouble if we cannot develop emotions? If we're like this guy, that the most that we could do is understand that we should be feeling excited, but we don't actually get excited. What the Alter Rebbe is going to say is like this. As long as you meditate, the Alter Rebbe says the meditation is more important than the emotion. The most important thing is that you're contemplating, is that you're spending time to connect intellectually, connect cognitively with these ideas. As long as you do that, and you then use that meditation as the impetus to go ahead and do a mitzvah and serve God and study Torah, that is good enough even if you're missing the emotion. And what the Alter Rebbe is going to say is, if you meditate properly, God is going to create that bridge as if you had the emotion. So let's read that now on the next page. Page 135. Is it enough to feel that worshiping God is appropriate without having any stronger emotions in your heart? Right? That's the question. So, says the Alter Rebbe, this is the way it works. So when you contemplate this idea deeply, with the discernment, with the understanding of the heart and mind, where you understand and you make a firm resolution. So meditate and then make a real resolution that you're going to follow through on your meditation. And your mouth and heart are in harmony, meaning this is not just a thought process, but then you follow through in behavior so that you fulfill with your mouth that which you resolved with the discernment of your heart and mind, which is you make learning God's Torah your desire and you study it diligently day and night. So again, the Alter Rebbe says, if you do this, you meditate and you make a firm commitment and then you do that commitment, you start studying Torah. And the same with your hands and all your limbs, that they're all engaged in fulfilling mitzvahs, just as you resolve with the discernment in your heart and mind. So if you do this, then, says the Alter Rebbe, then this is enough to render your worship as ideal. This intellectual resolve in your heart, although you do not have a palpable emotion, will invest itself within the deeds, within the words, and within the thoughts of Torah and its mitzvahs. It will act as their powerhouse, life energy, and the wings so that they can fly upward. The Alter Rebbe says, whatever you are missing because you do not have the emotions, it's okay. God is going to make it as if you have the emotion. Whatever is missing, we'll compensate for it. The meditation is the most important. As long as you meditate and then you follow through with the meditation to go ahead and do a mitzvah and study Torah, whatever the emotion gives to your mitzvah, the meditation is going to give that. And the Alter Rebbe says it's now just as though you did them with real emotions, with actual love and awe openly in your heart. It's just as if you observed the mitzvahs with desire and longing and yearning, palpable in the heart and soul, thirsting for God due to the burning coals of love in your heart, as described above. So, what we are not learning right now, and what the rest of the chapter is going to teach us, is just how important emotions are for the mitzvahs. We're starting to see some of the language here, that the emotions become the powerhouse, the life energy, the wings for the mitzvahs. It's like that the mitzvahs can fly upwards. It's like that the mitzvahs can soar upward, can soar above. But this is going to be a deeper spiritual, Kabbalistic idea we're going to learn about next week. But the Alter Rebbe says, getting emotional is less important than you putting in the effort to consciously, cognitively connect with God. So dear friends, what's the lesson that we've just learned today? The lesson of the Tanya here is that part of spiritual growth is that we need to learn about God and think about God. Make time to think about God, who God is, what He does for us, what He means to us. And at least a little bit of emotion. The Alter says you don't need to get very emotional. The Beinoni needs to meditate. That's most important. How emotional you get is of lesser relevance. But you got to meditate, contemplate about God, learn a little bit of Chassidus, go online, you go to Chabad.org, read an article, study something, study a Maimer, study some of the teachings of the Rebbes, and then try to meditate a little bit about it. And let's see if it moves us a little bit, and if it becomes that inspiration, that the idea turns into inspiration, which then turns into a resolve, an action, a behavior. And dear friends, with that we conclude tonight. Next class, we'll conclude chapter 16 on just the value, how important emotions are for our actions.
Good night.
Have a wonderful night. Yeah, take care, everyone.
Rabbi, you said
Yes, Reuben.
later in the book it talks about the meditations, or there's examples or something, and
You want to know where that is?
Yeah.
Chapter 41.
chapter 41.
Yeah,
Okay.
starting from chapter 41.
Okay.
You could start learning some specific guided meditations there.
Okay. That helps. I just was confused exactly where it goes, and it just
For sure. For sure.
it's a tough thing, and we try and get ourselves.
Good night.
Well,
This is not easy, Reuven, yeah? This is not the easy stuff in life.